Welcome to my show about understanding the Safe and Sound Protocol. This is presented by me, Heather McDuffie, from Lifeworks of Maine. I am a psychotherapist of 20 years experience, and I've been so impressed with the effects of the SSP that I have really worked hard to understand how this can possibly work to do all of the things that it has been doing. And my presentation here is an effort to share that with others who are interested in learning more. This is not an authoritative edition. In this talk, I'm going to be covering some introductory information about the Safe and Sound Protocol, what it is, the folks who benefit from taking it, and what that benefit looks like. I'll be describing how it could actually work, that sound waves can have such global effects and create a window of opportunity in an individual's ability to learn and grow that really can supercharge existing therapies and is incredibly hopeful for working with all manner of anxiety related to stress clinically. The Safe and Sound Protocol is vocal music that is played to you through headphones from an MP3 player. The music is filtered according to patented specifications, and the filtering changes throughout. Even though you may very well recognize some of these songs from popular music or on the children's recording from Disney shows, you will not really be able to hear the music well because it is filtered. So the point is not to listen to the music, but to allow the music to do its magic, so to speak, on the target, which are the inner ear muscles, and the ability of the ear to deliver accurate sound information to the individual. So you listen for 5 days in a row, 1 hour each day. And you can listen in our listening room or in a quiet location in your own home. Sometimes there are concerns about being able to tolerate the sound, the feel of the music, or the headphones, or the duration of the listening period. And we provide suggestions to you for how to occupy yourself or your child so that you are able to be present for the time that it takes to deliver the protocol. This is a graphic that shows diagnostic categories of individuals who benefit from the SSP. These categories have supporting research documenting their effect. If we move beyond diagnostic category and take a symptom view, we are better equipped to understand the global effects that we see with the SSP. What we see are that these symptom clusters implicate an underlying mechanism that affects many things in common. Because beyond any conscious process, there are unconscious processes by which the body regulates its own functioning. And the SSP helps the body itself to calm beyond what many people can achieve with their conscious mind or intention. And so looking at the effects of the SSP in terms of signs and symptom clusters rather than diagnosis gives us the opportunity to see similarities across conditions that may respond to the SSP, and that points again to the autonomic nervous system as a common thread, so to speak, in what creates trouble for these groups. And so I want to refer here to Porges's own quote, which is that the basic problem with autism and PTSD is being able to regulate and be calm in the presence of others. After administering the SSP, we see the kinds of global state changes that we would expect to see if the autonomic nervous system was able to downregulate more effectively. And these have a big impact on an individual's ability to function in the world, to learn from experience, to adapt and be flexible, um, to be hopeful, to make use of social interaction to adjust behavior. Um, in so many ways, we see an increase in the ability to engage with the world in a way that is calming for the individual and very positive. Here's a very condensed list of results that I've obtained here at Lifeworks after giving the SSP to about 50 clients at the time of this recording. You can see that they're congruent with what is being reported worldwide. Always a good thing to see. And here are a few more results from my own practice. These are direct quotes. Able to find words is obviously a very helpful thing for talk therapy. Able to make sense out of things. I find that people are much more sensitive to patterns that they've been caught in. They're beginning to be able to see those patterns and to see that they are not useful or not efficient. People seem to be able to kind of connect the dots and begin to take action to get themselves out of uncomfortable situations in ways that honor their functioning and their natural body's needs more effectively. A connection between the ear's ability to hear and the individual's heart rate and other markers of automatic body functioning has been shown in the literature, and that's what the SSP is doing. Basically, it is reestablishing functioning of the ear apparatus itself by exercising a couple of muscles in the middle ear. You may recognize the middle ear as the location of many childhood ear infections. And so you can see it's a vulnerable area, one that is also affected by genetics, we believe. It is affected by loud noises and blows to the head and other sorts of trauma. And we also know that we can selectively tighten that muscle or release that muscle in order to limit how much we're hearing or what it is that we're hearing in the environment. And so the SSP gets under the radar of the ear's protection and exercises that muscle anyway. These muscles are tiny. When they're not working properly, the ear fails to send a signal of safety to the body. And I want to repeat that. The ear fails to send a signal that supports safety in the body. When we establish normal functioning of the ear, then the calm alert signal is able to be transmitted and to actually calm the organism. And when that happens, the organism enters into a different physiologic state. And that state allows learning to happen. It allows adaptation. It takes the organism out of a threat orientation into an explore orientation or a restore orientation. And that's consistent with what we see clinically, which is a reduction in sensory sensitivities and defense strategies. The skin is not so reactive, the entire body is not so reactive, and we can begin to track autonomic activation across the body and to address those things individually in a way that is comprehensive and meaningful and really takes treatment forward. So as the body moves out of such a reactive state, the messages from the body's interior or the skin itself and what is perceived through the senses is less likely to be construed as dangerous and more likely to be understood as information that can be used and acted upon. So we say that neuroception turns into interoception or gives way to interoception, interoception being an articulated awareness of one's interior. From a clinical standpoint, we're moving from dissociated awareness to grounded awareness. Very helpful. To go into neuroception a little bit more, here's a graphic that shows you those parts of the body functioning that are automatic, out of consciousness, and impacted by the SSP. Here's another graphic. It's so interesting. As a therapist, I think of the times that I've had clients describe feeling like they had bugs crawling on them, um, that things look strange. And we thought of these in terms of hallucinations, which are mentally distorted, meaningful representations of some sort. Now I really am looking at them in terms of actual things that are happening that we don't really have language for. We don't talk about these things so much. So here's the part that is the polyvagal theory part. How does our social engagement system get involved in all this? Along with autonomic changes, we're seeing changes about the ability to orient to another person, the ability to activate the things that go into that, such as the movement of the mouth, the expressiveness of the face, the tracking of the eyes, and to go along with that, the voluntary intake of breath or holding of breath, the voluntary tightening of muscles, and so on. These all communicate something to those around us and represent to some degree our ability to even activate or make use of the social environment to be part of what it is that helps us to calm down. And so going into a little more detail about how the face responds to threat, because the face, of course, is the center of our interpersonal communication. We see extensive responses. It's again interesting to line these up next to my own clinical experience of clients who have been traumatized, or children or adults who are in a chronic state of depression, a downregulation, that is to say, a dorsal vagal collapse in the polyvagal language. And what you see is the same thing, a lack of responsivity in the face, whether it's tension or slackness, but there is a failure to engage with another person, and therefore the opportunity as another person to assist this individual out of their distress is actually quite limited. And in fact, I would add that there are studies that indicate that folks who have been traumatized misconstrue expressions, actually seeing smiles as angry expressions. So these facts line up nicely. The vagus nerve is the body's central nerve that coordinates functioning across all of its systems, including internal organs. Here is Porges' own graphic of the different things that the vagus affects depending on what state the body is in. threat perception or neuroreception results in whole system changes, and that's what this graphic shows. Um, Threat perception results in activation of the sympathetic nervous system, so you get the fight-flight activity that may look like a desire to run away or the need to be very busy or really getting speeded up. You may see parasympathetic nervous system shut down when organ functioning is reduced as blood flow is rerouted to the areas that are considered important to the body. The immune system suffers as a consequence of this, and you get brain and body changes. You get mood that is related to brain and body chemistry, hormones and neurotransmitters that take time for the body to metabolize. And that extends the length of time that any given stimulus can continue to affect the body. This is a graphic that should seem fairly familiar to many clinicians because it is the window of tolerance, somewhat modified. I apologize that I do not know where I got this graphic, but I did not make it, and I would like to credit the person who did make it. Anyhow, so here you can see the familiar curve that many of us drawn so many times, the red curve demonstrating the peak in internal activation that arises when we have a stressor. What's new about this is the blue curve underneath, which represents the other leg of the polyvagal system. And this is the leg that we are now talking about, that we haven't been talking about. This is the dorsal vagal system. And the dorsal vagal system runs our organs and affects our immune system for starters. So what you see here is that with chronic stress, both the sympathetic curve and the parasympathetic or dorsal vagal curve do not return to normal baseline. We knew that the sympathetic curve did not return to baseline, but we were having difficulty understanding some of the global effects that we see with trauma and chronic activation afterwards. This additional leg, the dorsal vagal leg, helps to explain how it is that the immune system is affected and that organ functioning is also affected by unaddressed trauma, that the body continues to maintain a homeostasis that is not optimal. If we continue to explore the effects of chronic stress and chronic sympathetic activation, that is to say, contraction of the skeletal muscles across time, what we see is that it affects posture. This was a set of postures described by Thomas Hanna. The red light reflex is the alarm posture. The green light reflex, I believe, is walking forward into danger posture. And I think the senile posture speaks for itself. Of course, you get additional variations. But if you just take a look at these postures and think about how does it affect organs, how does it affect vision, how does it affect the body's global functioning as you begin to compress the space or make certain kinds of movements more difficult because you're functioning from a reflex-based position, which is tense. And so take a look at what this posture actually does to us physically. Those of us who spend a lot of time sitting, take heed. We can learn it and we can initiate it by chronic sitting or driving. And here's a nice graphic showing the effects of this chronic posture. And here's the green light response unpacked a bit. If you're a leap into action kind of person, you would recognize this. TMJ, back pain. And this is a particularly interesting graphic that shows us a trauma reflex, a trauma response. And if you imagine this being chronically engaged, in addition perhaps to one of the other conditions, these are positions that we hold in our body and that when we become tense, become more pronounced. There are no known long-term risks for taking the SSP. Short-term, we may often see an exacerbation of certain kinds of behavior, and also some responses from the ear that indicate that it is being worked and that it is being affected, particularly in individuals who have had a history of ear infections or eustachian tube issues, things of that nature that affect the ear, serious fevers. There may be more ear-related symptoms and discomfort. This is often handled effectively by slowing the protocol down, and by being attentive to the notion that less is more with the SSP. People tend to want to hear the music well, and that's not even possible because some of the frequencies are filtered out. So it's good to prepare folks for the fact that they're not listening to music, but letting music exercise their ears. Um, in fact, adjustments to the protocol are very helpful to make it a doable and comfortable intervention. You can take a break. Small children will often have difficulty sitting still for such a long period, and so we can make adjustments both in terms of volume, setting, time, and activities to help the child get in the time required. In addition, we find that people need to do it again in order to continue to benefit, and this does make sense given the demonstration that it opens a window of opportunity and that there are patterns in our own responsiveness that tend to shut that window down again. We like to return to our known level of functioning, and that happens in so many ways. So it completely makes sense that the protocol would need to be repeated, and at least with my adult clients who can articulate what they want well, there is no hesitation to do it again when they're able to do it, which is in itself a bit of a testimony because dedicating 5 hours in a row to completing the protocol is not always so easy in a busy world. During the time that the protocol is being taken, it's good to have support for the changes that start happening. Initially, there is the physical discomfort of sore ears for some people, and things like listening to female vocal music, avoiding exposure to real loud sounds. So advanced planning is helpful. Sometimes people complain about having fluid in their ears, and there are things that you can do for that, including changing your elevation, crushed ice, and so on. Social demands can become overwhelming for somebody who is struggling to integrate their senses with a new way of approaching people, getting accustomed more to eye contact, and so on. So it's good to be thoughtful about what kinds of stress you see your individual struggling with and to adjust what you're doing accordingly to help them. These are some of the therapies that support and enhance the effects of the SSP. Massage and acupuncture are very handy for post-SSP agitation, muscle tension, general soothing. The more manipulative therapies like occupational therapy, physical therapy, reflex integration therapy, which is incredibly useful, are supercharged by the SSP because of this window of opportunity when the nervous system is now able to respond and form new connections. And we see that in the behavior of individuals who have taken it. One study reported an 80% increase in speech fluency in just 2 weeks while taking speech therapy. These kinds of advances are startling when they occur, and we are exploring more ways to enhance, roll out the effects that are possible, and make it more predictable. And here's a bit more, just a few suggestions based on what we've been learning here, and also strategies that are being shared internationally through through ILS itself. Only licensed professionals who are certified SSP administrators by ILS can deliver the SSP to you. There are SSP providers worldwide, and you can find them by going to the ILS website and doing a provider search. If you live within the state of Maine and would like to know more, please visit my website to see my current cost structure.